Botox. Restore lost volume and reduce signs of aging with Juvederm. Shed entire layers of skin with one of 4 different chemical peel options. They're not about band-aids or cover-ups. They're about real, lasting change that meets your unique needs. Book your consultation and learn how cosmetic treatment can bring your inner beauty to the surface.
Call Northwest Plastic Surgery Associates today, 728-3811, or visit nwpsa.com.
Warmer days are ahead, and if you want to have the best summer yet, you need your car looking fresh, and your boat better have the tunes ready to bump on the lake. Aspen Sound is your go-to spot, whether you need a windows tinted, you need to upgrade your music system on your boat, or you need a new sound system in your car. And this March, Aspen Sound is teaming with Tutelo Nuanez for an NCAA Tournament Bracket Challenge. Aspen Sound will be giving away $500 worth of prizes, including a $250 prize to first place. Tune into Tutelo Nuanez weekdays from 4 to 6 p.m. Enter the ESPN Bracket Challenge, presented in part by Aspen Sound.
Burn Street Bistro, where Montana comes to live, laugh, and brunch, is also home to Missoula's dankest lunch menu, featuring bangers like spicy Korean fried chicken sandwich with samjang sauce and kimchi, a fish and chip sub with fried cod, malt vinegar marinated iceberg, and house-made French fries loaded into a sub roll, as well as local beef burgers and a bevy of tasty salads to get you started on those New Year's resolutions we can't wait to hear all about. Not downtown, not Reserve Street, Burn Street.
Come into your local Fred's Appliance and see the full line of Bosch kitchen appliances.
Get hassle-free instant rebates up to $1,500 on Bosch kitchen packages.
See the new line of Bosch dishwashers at Fred's. Loaded with new features, you'll see why Bosch dishwashers are consistently top-rated.
Adjustable racks, including a third rack, and the quietest dishwashers on the market are some of the reasons people love their Bosch dishwasher.
The new Bosch French door refrigerator has features only found on refrigerators costing twice as much. Get up to a $1,500 instant rebate on Bosch packages. This is your chance to save big on new Bosch appliances. Bosch is known for quality, and at Fred's, we're proud of the huge selection of major appliances we have in stock and ready for pickup or delivery.
Need to finance? No problem. Pay no interest when paid in 12 months at Fred's Appliance. Fred's is always open Sunday, so we're there when you need us.
Fred's Appliance, 93 South, 5 minutes south of Brooks and Reserve.
Fred's Appliance. We sell appliances. Only appliances.
Feeling nickel and dimed at your bank? This is Bob Burns of Stockman Bank. We understand and are here to help. With a $100 minimum opening deposit, our 406 checking account offers free paper statements, no minimum balance, and a free Visa check card. And you can access your account anytime, anywhere. Switching is just a click away. So stop by any of our convenient locations and open your account today. Still local, still free. Stockman Bank, Montana's brand of banking, member FDIC.
Join Grizzly Hackle Fly Shop tomorrow for their 16th annual Customer Appreciation Day. Store-wide sales, hourly giveaways, barbecue, and more. Don't miss grand prizes from Sims, Patagonia, R.L. Winston Rod Company, Nautilus Reels, Orvis, and Yeti. Try on waders, cast rods, see new flies, or check out the latest and greatest gear in the fly fishing industry. Some of the best fly tiers in Montana will be on hand, showing you how to tie their favorite flies. Stop by the Grizzly Hackle tomorrow, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. at 215 West Front Street.
ESPN Radio for Western Montana, KKVU HD3 Stevensville, and 102.9 FM. ESPN Radio for Western Montana, KKVU HD3 Stevensville, and 102.9
It's 4 o'clock.
FM.
Welcome to Tutelo Nuanez, Montana's only statewide sports talk show. Broadcast on 102.9 ESPN Radio for Western Montana and across the state on SWX Television.
I like football!
Now, sports talk from Montana for Montana. Live from the Kurtz Polaris studio, here is Ryan Tutel and Coulter Nuanez.
Hello, Montana. The Grizzlies fall to Northern Colorado. Montana State, however, beats Southern Utah, and Bobby Hauck has a brand new 4-year contract. It is Tutelo Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio, SWX Montana Television. Outstanding to be with you on this fine Friday afternoon. Thanks for spending some time with us. We appreciate that. Hope you are well. Thanks for being here. Let's take a look at what we got in the show today. Colton, we're going to start with some basketball from last night in a game that could have actually been a lot worse than it ended up being. Northern Colorado gets a 7-point win, 71-64 over the University of Montana Grizzlies. Meanwhile, the Montana State Bobcats, they win by 8, 73-65. We'll tell you what that means, the implication of it, and what happened across Big Sky Conference hoops yesterday. We will also get you set up a little bit, at least, with what's going on around the state at the prep level, divisional tournaments, rocking and rolling. We will give you up-to-date information here in this very show as we go through, and look forward to the state tournaments next week as well. It is Friday, of course. Carolyn, our friend who doesn't know sports, she's going to be here as well with us, so we have a good time with that. And then at the top of the hour, we'll talk about a few things. First of all, this weekend in the Big Sky Conference, Trace Tinkle passing Gary Payton for the all-time leader in points scored at Oregon State history. So we'll talk about that a little bit. By the way, Saeed Pridgett moving up past Michael Ogine yesterday for all-time scoring at the University of Montana. So congratulations to Saeed on that accomplishment. A very big deal, a big benchmark as far as it goes. We also will talk about Bobby Hauck, who the university just announced has inked a new 4-year contract. This is something that has never been done. We've always said we've said it forever now. 3 years is the longest contract that you can go. The Board of Regents, that's what they, that's the mark that they've set as a state for university institutions. Well, the Grizzlies surpassed that with Bobby Hauck and got an exception, however you want to talk about it. And we are gathering information about this as quick as we can. Again, it was just this afternoon that this has been announced, but a 4-year extension for Bobby Hauck to be the head football coach at the University of Montana. So there you go. That is primarily what we've got in the show today. We'll go through all of it. If you want to listen live, you can listen on the stream. The stream is available all the time thanks to Opportunity Bank, your local bank, your opportunity. You can also pick up your phone and give us a call, 329-1899, that phone number. All guests join us via the Raggage Brothers RV phone line. We like to do this every Friday around here, though. We've got to take ourselves a moment and just stay hydrated. Today I've gone a little different, Coulter. Normally I'm a big coffee guy at the Florence Coffee Kiosk. You know what I mean? You go in there and you get yourself whatever drink you can get. I like to have the coffee. I like to be caffeinated. I like to feel good. But today I've gone ahead and gotten myself a tea because I have to wake up at like 3 in the morning to get on an airplane and go to Boston.
Oh, that's right. So you're doing the 3 a.m.?
Well, it's, excuse me, the flight's at 5.
So what time are you actually going to go to bed?
Well, probably the same time I always go to bed. 1. But I'm hoping that if I don't drink caffeine now, because usually my Fridays are really late because I'm usually drinking a nice iced latte or a cappuccino from Florence Coffee. Today I've got myself, this is good too, an iced huckleberry tea. Mm-hmm. Very good. They got a wide variety of teas over there. Some of them caffeinated, some of them not. Get whatever you need. Plus, it's such a nice day. Figure I might get myself a little iced beverage. What are you working on?
I got a little double shot, iced Americano. I usually go quad shot, but you got a little massage this afternoon.
Oh, man. Look at you.
Shout out to the gals. Shout out to Sam.
Look at you. You can't even talk, man.
Dude, so I feel like conventionalism would say because I am just a puddle that I would need more caffeine, but I was just worried about
overdoing the endorphins.
Yeah, I don't know. But thanks to Sam. That was really enjoyable experience. Are you a massage guy? Have you ever had a massage?
I've had a massage. I've had a couple. Yeah. Not a lot, a few. They are that's a very nice thing to have.
It is a very nice thing to have.
It's a real luxury to get a massage.
Yeah, I was laughing just at the process. I mean, this gal is very small, and so it's like jumping off the 3rd floor to just to work out the shoulder blade and stuff.
Well, hey,
she was very impressed by pain tolerance.
These massage therapists, though, they know what they're doing. They got the right angles and they got the right spots and they do the whole deal. But in any case, it's Friday. You can stay up late, or you can try and go to bed as early as you want. You can still have a very nice drink from the Florence Coffee Company. It's our Florence Coffee Company Friday afternoon coffee break. Thanks to them for that. Coulter, the Montana Grizzlies went into a game last night, and these are the types of games that Montana has rarely lost in the tenure of Travis DeCuire. And those are games, A, where they have already sustained a loss to the team they're playing a second time, and B, when they're playing in a game where they know that this is a game they quote unquote need to get to hang a banner, to win a championship, or at least to stay in the hunt to win a championship, to control their destiny. And they were outplayed by and large by the Northern Colorado Bears last night. Northern Colorado ends up winning this game 71-64. They went on a 13-2 run to UNC that ended at about the 2:30 mark of the second half, and they were up at that moment 16 points. And Dahlberg Arena, which you never see, was filing out. The fans were walking out of the building with 2.5 minutes to go. Now, the ones that left missed what was an exciting last 2.5 minutes. The Grizzlies went on an 8-0 run over the next about 70, 80 seconds of that game, closed the gap to 8, and they had a three-pointer, Coulter, by Derek Carter Hollinger, which was a very good look for DCH last night, that if he makes it, it's a 3-point basketball game. Didn't go, and ultimately they had to foul. Northern Colorado made some free throws, but they ended up winning by 7. But this is a game that could have been, 16, and Montana put a scare into UNC to try and climb back into this one. But at the end of the day, Northern Colorado handled their business in a hostile environment, over 4,800 fans in attendance last night, and they were ready to go. I thought it was a good crowd. I thought it was a good energy at Dahlberg last night. And Montana, I thought, was ready to go, and were basically outplayed, especially defensively in a lot of ways, by Northern Colorado. Saeed Pridgett got his. He got 26 points last night, led all scorers. But Kendall Manuel, who had 30 the first game against UNC, had a bucket, had 2 points last night for the Grizzlies, and it wasn't just missing. He was not allowed and able to get shots up. Clearly, that was a major point of emphasis by Jeff Lindor last night coming into that game, and it paid off. In Northern Colorado, give them credit, they swept the series against the Grizzlies, and now Eastern Washington is actually on top of everybody by a game at 15-4.
Clinched at least a share of the title.
Montana and Northern Colorado are both a game behind at 14-5. So Eastern Washington, they control their destiny. If they win, they are the regular season champions, and they're not sharing it. If they lose and Northern Colorado wins, it will be Northern Colorado's, because they hold the tiebreak against Montana no matter what Montana does. The Grizzlies, they need them both to lose and have to win, obviously, tomorrow against Southern Utah in order to clinch a share. They would win it. They would be the regular season champions in that scenario, but that's the only scenario now that they would.
It was an interesting night last night in Dahlberg Arena. I thought it was the first time that the Grizz have looked really tight all year. I shouldn't say that. Tight this year, since 2020 rolled around. Grizz looked tight often early, but they've been playing pretty loose for most of this season. Like, even when they played at Portland State, they just looked kind of listless at Portland State, but not necessarily tight. They looked tight. You could tell they were kind of feeling the pressure last night. I think part of that is they are used to whoever's playing in Dahlberg Arena being on their heels, being a little bit scared. Or I shouldn't say scared, but intimidated. Northern Colorado's not intimidated. Montana coming into last night had won 39 out of their last 42 games at home. After last night, it's still 39 out of 43, 39-4 over the last 3 years. But 2 of those losses are Northern Colorado. Can't you name the other 2?
At home?
At home, over the last 3 years.
Sac State?
Nope.
Portland State.
Portland State, in the overtime when Boo Boo Woods scored 29. It was the first conference loss of last season. And then what's the 4th home loss for the Grizz?
Southern Utah?
Montana Tech.
Oh, right.
But North Colorado won in Missoula 2 years in a row.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the second time in 4 years that Northern Colorado has spoiled Montana, hanging a banner, a regular season banner. So, first of all, we were talking about this at lunch. I think Jeff Lindor deserves a ton of credit. He has a very well-constructed team. I think when you look at the numbers, if you just looked at the box score, you say, okay, Saeed Pridgett had 26 points, even though the Grizz lost. He outplayed Jonah Radabaugh because Jonah Radabaugh was guarding him, and Jonah Radabaugh scored 21 points.
Yeah.
Not the case. Jonah Radabaugh, what does Saeed Pridgett do so well? Besides, he facilitates so well, he feels the game so well, he scores at a high level.
So everything is
But it's when he scores that has set him apart this year. It's not just the 24 points sometimes. It's when he goes and gets 4 buckets in a row to put the Cats on their heels like he did in Bozeman. It's when he takes over the game at the perfect time. When he takes over the game and scores 15 in a row for the Grizz like he did, I think it was against Idaho State. It was Jonah Radabaugh that made those plays last night. Pridgett scored 26 points, but I wouldn't say that any of the particularly of the buckets were that timely compared to Radabov. Pridgett had a bucket in the lane to cut the lead to 2. Radabov answered with a finish in traffic. I think it was Timmy Falls hit his 1 bucket of the second half to give the Grizz their one and only lead of the entire game.
They had 2. One was
no, actually,
like
it was Pridgett. It was Pridgett. This was actually the best, I thought, scene of the game in terms of Radabov's ability to respond. Radabov was guarding Pridgett. Pridgett lowered his shoulder and knocked Radabov over.
Yep.
We saw 6 charges called in the first half, including 4 on Northern Colorado. Saeed Pridgett sat out the last 7:58 of the first half. Jonah Radabov sat out the last 9:21 of the first half because they each got called for a pair of charges. So the refs were quick to call the charge in the first half, but in the second half,
they didn't.
Radabov tries to draw the charge. He gets no call. He gets up. He gets after the ref a little bit, but then he puts it in the rear view, takes the ball up the court, drills a 3, gives Northern Colorado the lead right back. They never relinquish it.
Yeah.
After that 3, they go on a 10-2 run. Then Montana answers. They cut it to 3. What happens again? A great stat line. But each and every one of his plays in the second half was at an absolutely key moment that just gut-punched Montana.
Well, along those very lines, here's Travis DeCure, who's asked about the made threes by Northern Colorado, and if that was the difference, here's what he had to say.
I mean, if they only make 5, you figure, you know what, we should win. You get 15 and 8 out of DJ, you're thinking we score in the 70s, they probably scored in the 60s because they only made 5 threes. The reality is their big showed up. They shot an extremely high percentage around the rim, which they've been doing a lot lately, and then their timely threes. You know, if they only made 5, I think 4 of them all came at key moments. Hume being left open up top, the skip pass pushed it to 7, that broke our back, and then Radabov's 2 step backs off the switch.
Exactly like you said. I mean, the 2 step backs off the switch and that skip pass, which was a skip pass from Jonah Radabov, who had 5 assists in this game to go with 6 rebounds and his 21 points. And also as a team, Northern Colorado was 56% from the field in total. The Grizzlies 47%. Not bad, but it's a 9% deficit in terms of your percentage. But also, they only made UNC 5 3-pointers, but they were 5 of 13, so it's still a high percentage. The Grizzlies 1 of 12, 1 made 3-pointer in this basketball game. And Montana, it's not a team that makes a lot of threes. That's okay, but to only make 1 on 12 attempts, you get a couple more down in some key moments. I mean, Jared Samuelson, I think, had a 3 to take the lead that bounced 2 or 3 times on the inside of the cylinder before it finally went out, and there was a couple of those for the Grizzlies last night by and large. But again, Saeed Pridgett, he had 26. Derek Carter-Hollinger, a very nice game, 6 of 11 from the floor. He had 13, and the 1 made 3 for the Grizzlies. And after that, nobody in double digits. Jared Samuelson, 8. Timmy Falls, 6. And as we mentioned, Kendall Manuel, 1 of 7 last night, 0 of 3 from beyond the arc, and just never got it going offensively for the Grizzlies. So Montana falls. They are now, as we've said, 14 and 4, tied with Northern Colorado, but Northern Colorado having the tiebreak. But at the end of the day, it's Eastern Washington's shooting match here tomorrow. They will be playing for a regular season championship, and the Grizzlies now fall from 1st to 3rd. How consequential is that in the grand scheme of things when you talk about the tournament? I'm not sure. Maybe some, maybe none. Who knows? Some point you're just going to always have to play whoever it is you play.
But you don't, because sometimes somebody will knock somebody else out for you.
That's right.
The part of this, here's the thing, though. This year, the only matchup that's a quote-unquote, there's 2 good matchups for the teams that got buys now. We know the all 5 teams that got buys, right? It's just a matter of who finishes 4th and 5th between Montana State and Portland State. But we have all 5 teams that have buys. It's Montana, Eastern Washington, Northern Colorado, Montana State, Portland State. But Montana State is Montana has an advantage in that matchup, certainly. Montana has a lot of advantages against Eastern Washington. But the worst matchups in the league for Montana are Northern Colorado and Portland State. And so they're going to, if they were the 1, okay, they play Portland State first, let's say. If they're the 2 or the 3, then they're going to play Northern Colorado in the semis.
And not first, in the semis.
In the semis, right.
If they're both teams would make it, right.
So, I don't know. I think, to your point, you're going to have to play everybody. The game within the game
is great.
Two different points. Three different points, actually. Here. First of all, Travis DeCure mentioned this. Northern Colorado was bailing to get back to not let Montana to get a transition. So even on a missed shot, UNC was already back. So
No
Montana
offensive
couldn't
goals.
run and gun at all. They did not try to crash the offensive glass at all. Shot goes up, everybody's sprinting back. So there was no transition for Montana at all. That kills you because that really hinders what Timmy Falls is as a player. Kendall Manuel, even though you don't think of him as like a lane-filling type of guy, he gets so many of his shots in transition because he'll fill the lane and then you give it to him and he can just go work his way, get that mid-range shot. So no transition really hurt Montana. I thought that the game within the game between Syed Pridgett and Jonah Radabaugh, I thought both guys could sense the moment, both in terms of the impact for their team, but also in terms of the impact for their individual potential accolades. I thought these two guys were the front runners for MVP coming into the game. I think they're still the front runners coming out of the game. I thought Syed Pridgett had a slight lead on Jonah Radabaugh for Big Sky MVP going into the game. I think Jonah Radabaugh has a slight lead on Syed Pridgett for the MVP coming out of the game. And the last point I think that's worth making, and you and I have argued about this a lot, there's a variety of ways to guard the Grizzlies. I think that sometimes stat lines can be deceiving. Syed Pridgett's 26 points, I think it was like his third or fourth highest total in points during conference play this season. But how many assists did he have? I think he had two.
2 assists. 23
Between
shots.
20 and 24 points and 5 to 8 assists for Syed Pridgett, the Grizzlies are going to win 90% of those games. More than 24 points for Syed Pridgett is going to mean more shots, and this is what you and I have argued about a lot. Syed Pridgett is a phenomenal scorer, but I can't think of any other elite scorer in the league over the last 10 years where they score all their points on 2-point field goal makes. No free throws, no three-pointers, just twos. Jarek Harding, for example, if he makes 12 free throws in a game, or 12 field goals in a game, he's dropping 40.
Right.
The two times I ever saw Tyler Hall make 12 field goals in a game, he dropped 39 and 42. Pridgett made 12 field goals last night and scored 26. It's a great efficiency, but what I'm saying is when you just plod your way in and get a 2 in the half court and the other team answers with a 3, it puts you behind the 8 ball, even if you are keeping pace, even if you're a tremendous individual scorer. So what I'm saying is you cannot take away from what Syed Pridgett does and how much he shoulders for the Grizzlies. But if I was a coach, the way I would choose to guard Montana, I would say guard Syed Pridgett one-on-one and don't let anybody else do it. Because it's Kendall Manuel and Timmy Falls and Josh Vasquez that are going to beat you. Pridgett's getting between 20 and 25 every night.
Yeah.
It's when Manuel scores 2 that the Grizz get beat.
The other thing, too, though, is for Syed Pridgett, and we'll hear from him in just a moment, but he had 12 made field goals, which is great. He did it on 23 shots. For anybody else, I mean, 12-23 for 26 points is like 55% field goal percentage from the floor, which is really, really good. Except for Syed Pridgett is like a 70% guy very often.
He was last year. He's shooting 51% league play this year.
But
still, I know what I understand.
You know, when you're talking, and he's shot more threes this year than he has before. It's still not a lot, but a few. But when you talk about what he does in the paint, and I thought they did a really nice job. I think, first of all, I thought the bigs, Jokic for Northern Colorado, who's a giant 6'9" Canadian who's in there filling it up, and then the help by Bodie Hume as well forced a lot of uncomfortable shots, some of which still fell for Montana, but some of which did not. And I thought they did a nice job in that capacity. But in general, I think you're right. In this case, I don't think it was the 3s for 2s. I mean, they only made 5. In this case, though, it is still.
But it's not just that Northern Colorado made, though. Syed Pridgett winds his way into the paint, and when he gets you and then takes it off the glass, great. But he's at his best when he gets you and takes it off the glass, and then the next time he gets you and then kicks it to the corner.
Right.
Montana kills people when everybody collapses and Josh Vasquez goes 3 for 3 and Timmy Falls goes 2 for 2. It's just like what they did to the Cats in Missoula. That's the dream offensive execution where Pridgett still gets his 24 points, but he's also doling out assists, but not just assists that lead to 3s.
That's right. That's exactly right. But also then in this case, the team went 1 of 12. Pridgett himself went 0 of 2. Jared Samuelson 0 of 2. Kendall Manuel 0 of 3. I mean, and this to me is more about an excellent defensive performance and probably doing what you're talking about is we are going to maintain our distance on the perimeter so that we can get out there on a kickout.
Right.
And we're going to risk it. It's not a true stand up and guard him one-on-one. There's help defense certainly on the interior, but you have to maintain touch with whoever your perimeter guy is and get out there, get a hand up, and harass it. In the case of Kendall Manuel, I mean, don't even let him catch the ball.
That's it. That's what next level coaching is, though. Is Jonah Radabaugh's the best defensive player in the league.
Yeah.
He still can't stop Saeed Pridgett.
That's right.
Because you can't stop Saeed Pridgett. So then you don't try as hard. You're going to try to stop everybody. Certainly, slow them down, no doubt. But what I'm saying is, it really is possible to not let Kendall Manuel catch the ball. It really is possible to make Timmy Falls force every shot that he takes. It really is possible to not let Josh Vasquez shoot the ball. Those are real, attainable goals. So that's what you write on the board. You say, okay, we're going to work our hardest on Pridgett, make him work for his points, but we are not going to let anybody else beat us. And I think that's the thing that the Montana has to worry about going to the tournament, because the blueprint is set now.
No,
this is what everybody is going to try to do.
But that's the key word, try. Because Jeff Linder deserves a ton of credit, but he's also got the horses defensively to do it.
It's true, and also, when we talk about the top teams, I do think that Montana State, even though they don't have the same level of talent in Northern Colorado, they are flexible enough that they could try to replicate this. Portland State and Eastern Washington play systems. They're not trying to replicate anything.
Right.
They only do what they do, period. Like, Portland State's not going to go out of their three-quarter court trap to go play this deny on the perimeter, get-back defense like Northern Colorado did. They can't do it. They've been practicing this same way for 3 years under Barrett, period.
Right.
You're not just going to tear it all down. So that's actually a really good point. Some teams might try to replicate it. You know, NAU. Honestly, Northern Colorado actually stole a little bit of this from NAU. The send four guys back and slow down the game. That's how NAU got loose against Montana as well. So, I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see, though, because this tournament, to me, you're going to have to win 3 games in 3 days if you want to win.
Yeah.
And it's going to all come down to matchups.
Saeed Pridgett passed Michael Ogine, all-time scoring for the University of Montana last night. Despite the loss, he was asked about what it's like to have passed that very notable benchmark.
It's crazy just to know that us three was all on the same team at one point. So just knowing that I'm up there with that caliber of players is amazing. It would have been a lot better off a W, but it's all right. I'm happy for what I'm doing, and they're happy for me as well. They are encouraging me.
The game within the game, you and Jonah, 2 of the best players in the league, maybe the 2 best players in the league. But how fun is it to play in that game when you know you're going heads up with a guy like that?
It's great. Kind of like you want to make a statement, but don't want to do too much and get the team out of whack. So just making sure you keep the intensity, but don't do too much, and just knowing that the coaches and your teammates what you believe in you.
You know, and again, I thought Saeed Pridgett came to absolutely play last night, and I thought he played really well actually in a lot of different ways. But also, it was clear that he was going to go toe-to-toe with Jonah Radabaugh. And if you talk about just that individual matchup, I understand what you're saying about the passes and the timeliness of the scoring, and obviously his team won, so Jonah Radabaugh gets that. But if you talk about Jonah Radabaugh is the #1 defender in the Big Sky Conference.
Right.
And Saeed Pridgett, when it's one-on-one, does whatever he wants. He just does. He's bigger, he's stronger, he's better offensively.
That's elite basketball in a nutshell.
That's right.
The best scorers in the world you can't defend them. I mean, there's a point in Kobe Bryant's career where he was missing shots because Kobe missed the shot. It has nothing to do with you. I mean, I'm not saying Saeed Pridgett's Kobe Bryant, but you know what I'm saying.
But
like,
I guess
better offense beats elite defense all the time. I guess what I'm saying is the high level, if you're talking about just the true high level nuances of the game, there's a variety of different ways to go 12 of 23 and score 26 points. Did you let the game come to you, or did you force the game? And I thought Saeed Pridgett was on the side of forcing it a little bit more than letting the game come to him last night. It's so interesting because when you look at him, we have sample sizes of so many games where he's had almost identical stat lines and scored almost identical amounts of points. But how are the points coming?
See, I maybe a little bit. If you're going to tell me that he forced it, I'm just going to tell you that he was prepared to be the man last night because of the matchup that it was. And so maybe it's a semantic argument, but also you made the very point. In a lot of ways, the defensive game plan was to let Saeed do what he did. Right. And so it's not as if he was just going 1-on-3 and taking bad shots. He was taking shots that were good shots by and large, he had room to operate in the lane and did so. The question is there something that he could have done to create more on the exterior for his team? And I don't know that there was or wasn't. But again, this to me is more credit to Northern Colorado than blame to the Montana Grizzlies. We spoke with Jonah Radaball after the game. You asked him, what is your mindset coming in? Because they played very well here in Missoula. They weren't scared, and they've won now 2 in a row. Jonah Radaball was outstanding last night. Again, here's what he said.
We kind of just came in with that same mindset we have every game. Like, we know these guys are really good. We can't let our guard down, and we're only good when we're on edge. So we came in on edge, expecting, come out here and do what we do. So that was really the mindset, is just come in here, play our game, and we know it'll happen.
Is it easier to be on edge when you're playing in front of a hostile crowd? Because you guys have played well here 3 times in a row.
Yeah, it's definitely easier to be on edge when you're at a place like this. It's tons of fans. They're yelling at you, and a really good team like Montana. So we knew what to expect. We knew they're a really good team. So we stayed on edge, just preparing for this game, and it worked out in our favor.
It certainly did, and they now have a look. If if they win and Eastern loses, they're the regular season champions, Northern Colorado. And to me, I mean, it's easy for me to say when I've watched Montana beat Eastern twice and watched them lose to Northern Colorado twice to say that Northern Colorado is the best team I've seen. Outside of Montana one way or another, but against Montana they have been the best, period. And so it'll be an interesting race here, especially for that MVP conversation, which we'll have in the next hour. We'll take a quick break. On the other side, we'll get you updated on all of the divisional tournaments, where we're standing right now, what teams are doing what in state basketball playoffs, with the state tournament itself coming up next week. That right after this. Hey, this year marks the 16th annual Customer Appreciation Day at Grizzly Hackle Fly Shop. The first Saturday in March, that's tomorrow, every year since they've kicked off the fishing season, celebrating the world's best customers. Since 1988, out on Rock Creek, they have been proudly serving the fly fishermen living in Missoula or traveling from all over the world to fish our great waters. It's their pride and joy to know that their customers have kept them in business all these years. This year, Customer Appreciation Day will be bigger than ever. They have a great lineup of companies that will be on hand to show off their gear and answer any questions you might have. Simms, Patagonia, Orvis, Winston Rods, Nautilus Reels, Dirty Water Fly Company, and Umpqua. Try on waders, cast rods, see new flies, or check out the latest and greatest gear in the fly fishing industry. The best fly tires in Montana will be on hand showing you how to tie their favorite ties. Grand prizes and hourly giveaways from Simms, Patagonia, Yeti, Umpqua, Nautilus, Hatch, and more. Their entire store will be 25% off. Don't miss out on this great day at Grizzly Hackle.
Get March markdowns at Carl Tyler Chevrolet. Right now, save big on this 2019 Blazer all-wheel drive with leather interior, power panoramic sunroof, navigation, and Bose audio. Now $5,800 off. Or take advantage of $4,900 off this 2019 Trax LT all-wheel drive. Visit us today at 3663 North Reserve Street or gmofmontana.com. Carl Tyler Chevrolet, find new roads.
This is Mike Nugent with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. Berkshire Hathaway provides Western Montana with full-time real estate professionals for you whenever you need us. Our reputation as the state's most knowledgeable and available real estate group has helped build unmatched trust in the Garden City and statewide. If you have been thinking of making a real estate move in the short or long term, give me a call. No pressure, no expectations. Just professional opinions and service at whatever pace you are comfortable with. Give me, Mike Nugent, a call today, 531-1802. And remember, every question is good to ask.
Seafood lovers, it's time to get cracking at the Montana Club's annual Lobster Fest. Feast on one of our 19 mouth-watering lobster dishes, live Maine lobster, succulent lobster tail, and tantalizing one-of-a-kind lobster specialties. 3 big days, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, March 5th through the 7th. It only happens once a year. Don't miss it. See the menu at montanaclub.com. The Montana Club's Lobster Fest on Brooks and North Reserve, Missoula.
Have you been in an accident and have no idea what to do? I'm here with Catherine from the Advocates Injury Attorneys.
Unfortunately, people are injured in accidents every day, and dealing with the insurance company can add even more pain to an already bad situation. That is where hiring the Advocates can help. Let us guide you through the process and take on the hassles for you so you can just focus on getting better.
If you've been injured in an accident, give the Advocates a call, 406-640-4444, or online at montanaadvocates.com. The Advocates are on your side.
Grizz Greats, the Coaching Tree podcast is out now. Interviews with every living head coach in the history of the University of Montana men's basketball team.
If you're a basketball fan, you're going to love this. If you're a Grizz fan, you're going to love this. If you're a Missoulian, you're going to love this as well. One of the greatest parts about living in the state of Montana is how steeped in history it is, and this is a historical archiving of one of the proudest lineages our community has to offer.
Grizz Greats, the Coaching Tree podcast, out now wherever you get your podcasts. Available thanks to Blackfoot Communications, Stockman's Bar, and Berkshire Hathaway Real Estate. The older people look at the calendar, may think about college basketball, March Madness, various things going on in the professional world, but this is an unbelievable time of year for high school sports.
In February, the competition really ratchets up in high school sports. We're headed toward the state tournaments of both basketball and wrestling, and we'll cover it all at Tutel Nuanez, 4 to 6 p.m. every single weekday on 102.9 ESPN.
That's right, covering what matters in the state of Montana. Montana's #1 sports talk radio show, Tutel Nuanez.
ESPN Missoula Sports Center.
Good afternoon. Trace Tinkle is the greatest scorer in the history of Oregon State basketball. The OSU senior and Missoula Hellgate product scored 23 points in the Beavers' 68-65 win over Stanford to surpass Gary Payton as the school's all-time scoring leader. There it is. Tinkle now has 2,190 points, and this is the 7th most in Pac-12 history.
Imagine being above the glove. What a thing. The Montana Grizzly men's basketball team fell at home last night to Northern Colorado, 71-64. Late in the second half, the Bears went on a 13-2 run to assume a 16-point lead with just over 2.5 minutes to play. The Grizz put on full court pressure and went on an 8-0 run of their own over the next 120, but couldn't climb all the way back.
Jonah Radabau led UNC with 21 points, including 17 in the second half. He sparked a 10-2 run and a 13-2 spurt by making three-pointers. Grizz senior Saeed Pridgett led the Grizzlies with 26 points, including 20 after halftime. The loss drops Montana to 14-5, and they're now in third place in the Big Sky standings, heading into the final game of the regular season tomorrow night. The Grizz will celebrate senior night for Pridgett, Kendall Manuel, and Jared Samuelson against Southern Utah at Dahlberg Arena, 7 o'clock tip.
Finally, Montana State posted a 73-65 win over Southern Utah that clinches a first-round bye in next week's Big Sky tournament for the Cats.
ESPN Missoula Sports Center is brought to you by Aspen Sound.
He's an old hippie and he don't know what to do. Should he hang on to the old? Should he grab on?
Now, we're going to talk a little bit more about the Montana State game because we didn't get to it. But, Coulter, you and I, after that Sacramento State game, both looked at each other and said, the bottom is going to fall out of this thing. They're going to finish 8th. They're maybe one and done at the tournament. It's just like, it just is so sad. And if they don't just go ahead and beat a good NAU team at NAU and then a game to clinch it against a very talented Southern Utah team and get it done, tip of the cap to Harold Frey, first and foremost, and Danny Sprinkle and the rest of that team for getting it done. And what, lo and behold, here they are, and they are getting a bye at Boise. They will not be playing until Wednesday. So a huge win for Montana State. And to turn the ship like that, very impressive.
I know I've been teasing the SkylineSportsMT.com series we got coming out, but for all the people in Montana, which is all the people out there, hello, everybody. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Sunday, we're going to have our main Montana-centric features. So we'll have features on site. Pridgett, Kendall Manuel, Harold Frey, and Fallon Frigi. 4 outstanding student-athletes.
Yep.
I talked to Harold Frey for about 30 minutes on Monday. And as always, an exceptional interview. I can't believe that the kid can give the best interview in the league when it's not even his first language.
Right.
It's amazing. But like he said, honestly, man, I didn't come across the globe to not go down swimming. And that's what they're doing right now.
Yeah,
and it's interesting because it tests what we talk about, what makes a coach of the year, what makes an MVP. And a lot of times it goes to the coach of the best team and the best player on the best team. I think that's a great way to do it. In a lot of ways, that's the right way to do it. But I don't know how you can't say that Danny Sprinkle's not one of the leaders for coach of the year. I mean, his team has been dead on the side of the road like 6 times this year. And then they go and win them multiple games in a row, and they got a bye. Yeah. I mean, they never got a bye with Tyler Hall, and they got a bye. So it's amazing.
It's time for our Prep Extra segment. It's brought to us by Farmers State Bank. Farmers State Bank is giving away $10,000 scholarships to seniors across Western Montana. Go to farmersebank.com to find out how you can apply. The deadline is March 15th, so you just got a little over a week left. So go to Farmers eBank and check that out and get involved. Coulter, divisional matchups, divisional tournaments at the high school level ongoing as we speak. Where do we stand right now?
Well, it's all in Missoula right now. If you're talking about AA, the Western AA, both the guys and girls are in Missoula. So right now, if you need some, that's a 7:30 tip. That will come on the heels of Helena Capital versus Kalispell Glacier. I expect Capital will probably handle that thing pretty easily, but the crosstown between Sentinel and Hellgate is fascinating, right? Because both these teams, I think, are state tournament-worthy teams.
Yeah.
But the loser is going to then have to fight their way back and still, is going to have an outside chance of even making it. So that's a huge game between the Spartans and the Knights, two teams that have been ranked in and out of the top 5 all year long. On the boys' side, Missoula Hellgate and Kalispell Glacier tipped at 3. I'll find a final for you. We don't have a final in this bracket I'm currently looking at, but that one has to be over by now.
Coming
and
close.
Then Missoula Sentinel and Helena Capital is ongoing as we speak. So we'll give you updates a little bit later on. But how about the Big Sky Screaming Eagles? Enter the Western AA with 1 win.
1 dub.
And they lost in the first round, but they beat Helena High to end Helena High's season.
And get one more game.
One
man.
more game.
Absolutely.
I mean, I don't know, man. I think that the open enrollment thing in Missoula has killed Big Sky more than anything, and I really do think it's actually something we should have a more extrapolated discussion about because I don't know. It's just not good for anybody to have a team in a AA town that just literally can't win games. But good for Big Sky because they beat Sentinel last week, and now they won a game in the tournament. So a little salvation for an otherwise disappointing season. But it'll be fun to watch this AA tournament play out in Missoula. And if you need something to do, go to that Sentinel Hellgate game tonight. That'll be a fun game.
Absolutely. On the eastern side of the state, AA, Billings West had the bye. Bozeman beat Billings Senior 65-56 yesterday. Those two teams are playing right now. That one tipped off just about an hour ago, so it's coming close. And we'll, again, try and get you updated scores as we're able. Billings Skyview plays Great Falls tonight. Skyview beat Belgrade 59-32, and Great Falls High beat CMR 56-21. 21 points in the whole game. Nice. Not great. Anyway, so
shot clock.
Those two teams, those two games to go to the championship, which is tomorrow, again, in the boys' eastern side. On the girls' eastern side of the AA, it is Billings West, again, who had the bye. Both West schools, outstanding. They will play Billings Senior at 5 o'clock. They're tipping off here in just about 20 minutes as Billings Senior beat Great Falls 28-20 yesterday. And then Great Falls, CMR, and Bozeman, the nightcap tonight in Billings for the other girls' semifinal to AA level.
One more piece of high school news, which is pertinent to folks listening in Missoula, and I guess around the state as well. Lady Grizz commit Kendall Keller, who's a senior at Havre High School. She is the Montana Girls Gatorade Player of the Year for this year.
Okay.
So that's outstanding. And another Gatorade Player of the Year joining Montana. This is actually interesting. This is one of the untold stories of what Tricia Bidford has done at Montana State. She has had a lot of outstanding Montana girls on her roster before, but right now she has one, Cole Badbear. That's it. Most of Montana State's girls are Midwestern girls. They have this connection from the Minnesota Fury, a club team in Minneapolis, so they have a whole bunch of girls from North Dakota and Minneapolis, only one Montana girl. So actually right now, when you look up and down Montana's roster, you have all the most recent Gatorade Players of the Year, whether it's Taylor Goligoski or Sophia Stiles, who was a 2-time winner, or Jamie Pickens, and now Kendall Keller. So Havre Blue Ponies, inside track to the Class A title again this year. They're a powerhouse right now. I mean, they've been rolling through Class A for several years now, but Kendall Keller, great senior year, 18.7 points, 4.3 rebounds, 2.5 steals, and the Gatorade Player of the Year.
Stu Tell Nuanez, it is the Prep Extra segment. It's brought to us by Farmers State Bank. Again, go online, farmersebank.com. $10,000 scholarships. Farmers State Bank has been giving away scholarships to graduating high school seniors for 20 years to date. They've given over $1.2 million in scholarships, and they're doing another $100,000 this year. So go to farmersebank.com to find out more. Again, March 15th, the deadline on that. We'll take a quick break. We'll come back. The chick who doesn't know sports. Hey, it's Friday, people. Can we have a little bit of fun around here? Let's do it. Do it right after this. You ready for a new truck? Get to Mildenberger Motors in Hamilton for the best deals and the best trucks. Duramax, Chevy, GMC.
Whether you're shopping for your first home, need something bigger, or downsizing for retirement, you need a mortgage. Talk to the experts at Farmers State Bank or start the application process online at farmersebank.com. Our mortgage lenders have many options to help you into the home of your dreams, from conventional to in-house, VA, rural development, and more. Farmers State Bank, your Montana bank since 1907, an equal housing lender and member FDIC.
Carl Tyler's Missoula Volkswagen annual Green Handle diesel sale happening now. Save big on our pre-owned TDI diesels with Carl Tyler's lifetime powertrain warranty, included at no cost to you. Visit Carl Tyler's Missoula Volkswagen and score a great deal. Located at 3665 North Reserve Street or MissoulaVW.com.
Hi there, it's Les Schwab Alignment and Brakes and Shocks and Wheels and Tires. Some tire places don't offer all that, but we do to help keep you safe. And during the Les Schwab Spring Tire Sale, save up to $110 on a set of 4 select tires. Stop by or book an appointment at leschwab.com. Les Schwab Tires, doing the right thing since 1952. Limited time offer while supplies last. Actual discount amount depends on tire size and type. Cannot be combined with other offers. Details at leschwab.com.
The Advocates want you to remember that warmer weather means more people will be out and about. Remember, slow down in residential areas because kids will be riding their bikes or their scooters or walking their dogs or enjoying the sunshine. School's still in session, so watch for kids and make sure to obey school bus laws. If you're injured due to someone else's negligence, the Advocates can help. Speak with an experienced attorney for free. Call 640-4444 or chat with an attorney online 24/7 at montanaadvocates.com. You deserve an advocate. Hey, Carolyn.
Hey.
Where do you find all your sports news?
I have unidentified sources. It's a pretty big business.
Every Friday on Tutel Nuanez, Carolyn shares what she learns from those unnamed sources.
That's right. It's Carolyn, the chick who doesn't know sports. Tune in every Friday to find out what you don't know about sports on Tutel and Nuanez.
The Chick Who Doesn't Know Sports, brought to you by the Iron Grizz. Tune in to Tutel Nuanez each Friday afternoon for your chance to win a voucher for 2 to wine tastings each Wednesday at the Iron Grizz.
The Missoulian Angler would like to announce a fundraiser on Saturday, April 4th at 4 p.m. for Trout Unlimited's Upper Clark Fork Restoration Project, and they're asking you to help launch their first annual Clark Fork Squala Fest with a bang. The event at the Missoulian Angler Fly Shop is dedicated to help improve fish populations and habitat in the Upper Clark Fork River watershed. Trout Unlimited's plan is a multi-pronged program that focuses on protecting and restoring cold, clean water and habitat to the river and its tributaries. Fish on, Montana.
Tutel and Nuanez on 102.9 ESPN Radio for Missoula.
Well, hi, how are you? It's Tutel and Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. And it is Friday, and on Fridays we like to have, well, a nice time with the chick who doesn't know sports, our friend Carolyn in studio with us. Hey, if you'd like to find us on the social medias, you can do so at Gus Tutel on Twitter, at 102.9 ESPN on Twitter, and at Skyline Sports MT on Twitter. And also, check out Grizz Grace, the Coaching Tree podcast, Wayne Tinkle's episode out right now. And next week, how about Travis DeCure? Go check that out along with all of the bonus episodes that are there. A lot of fun doing that. We appreciate everybody listening in and enjoying as well. It's Friday. I'm going to Boston tomorrow, so I'm phoning it in today. But thank God, because we got Carolyn, who never phones it in, the chick who doesn't know sports. Woo. Right here, brought to us by the Iron Grizz. Hi, Carolyn. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's going to be 60 degrees today.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Well,
you're getting a weather report today, too. You're welcome.
Man, 2 for 1. Carolyn joins us every single Friday, tells us all the things that we don't know, and occasionally some things that we did know.
Yeah,
about sports. Go ahead, Carolyn. The floor is yours.
Well, you know my feelings about athletes that graduate college and go into their professional sports and then blow all their money.
Yeah. I watched the documentary Broke again the other night, and I almost want to buy you an ESPN Plus subscription just so that you can watch it. You will be livid.
Okay, I'm going to write this.
I mean, these guys
Andre Rison running
are
up to the owner's office screaming, "Where's the rest of my money?" What do you mean, taxes?
Ricky Henderson framing a $1 million check and never cashing it.
What?
And
Where's
then
that check
the
now?
Yankees like calling him, being like, "So Ricky, this check hasn't cleared. What's the deal?" He's like, "Well, I didn't know I was supposed to cash it."
Oh my god. He's like, can't you Venmo me that
One
money?
of the dudes spent, I'm serious, more money than our 3 cumulative salaries on shoes.
Yes.
On shoes in one shopping spree.
Well, I discovered Dwayne Haskins
Yes.
from the Redskins.
Yes.
He's his first year NFL
Quarterback. Uh-huh.
And he did a little video on how he spent his first $1 million.
Spent his first $1 million. Okay, let's go.
Well, first and foremost,
He's only on. So there's only a couple. I mean,
yeah, but
only a couple $1 million.
No. But
he got endorsement.
Oh God! I mean, he's the quarterback of the Washington Redskins, first-round pick for
Well, right.
sure.
He doesn't have any national endorsements.
No, but
well, let me tell you, he's adorable.
he bought his mom a house.
He did buy his mom a house.
Yeah,
but
that's a
first,
good one.
You know what the first thing he did? He hired a financial advisor.
Hey.
He said, put away 75% of your money, and you can have the rest to play with.
Okay, but here's the thing: all these guys hire financial advisors.
I don't know about that.
The issue is that most of them hire their cousin.
Well, I think
or their neighbor or their buddy.
I just realized that he said 75% put away and 35 spent, and that does not equal 100. But that's beside the point. Okay.
It's like Larry Krzysztofiak said on Grizz Greats The Coaching Tree. He said, moved back to Missoula, I thought I was going to go into financial advising or real estate. And then I had this stark realization, why the hell would my friends want to give me their money or let me buy them a house?
Fair.
Completely.
That's fair.
That's exactly what he said, too.
Well, okay, so he did buy his mom a house for $750,000. He
Yes.
says that does not count as his first $1 million, so because that was not on him.
Oh.
He did buy a Bentley, $250,000.
Okay. All right.
Vacation. He's taking his first vacation this summer in the Bahamas, $10,000.
All right. That's
Jewelry and watches.
reasonable.
Guess how much he spent on jewelry and watches?
I'd say upwards of $150,000.
70. That still blows my mind. Clothes, $40,000.
Sort of like me. I mean, I understand.
Oh yeah, those pants today were $40,000. Right?
They make me
clothes
look-
you could get $40,000.
Yeah, 3 suits.
I mean, go to
3
Old
suits. I mean, it
Navy.
just depends what you're trying to buy, you know?
Ridiculous. Okay, you guys know about this rookie dinner?
Yeah.
Where the rookies have to take the veterans out to dinner.
So the rookies have to take him out, and he said he'd do it again because these are the linemen that keep him safe, blah, blah, blah.
$10,000 on the rookie dinner.
Yeah. Nice. Some nice bottles at that table.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he said the best. He goes, we're not going to Applebee's. No offense to Applebee's, everybody.
The best part about this was Vince Young, who was one time. Did he win the Heisman? I don't know if Vince Young was a
Reggie
one-time-
Bush won the Heisman.
Right. Well, Vince Young, one-time outstanding college quarterback, played for Tennessee Titans. For a moment in time, he was spending something like $25,000 a month at the Cheesecake Factory.
Oh my God!
He had like an open tab for anybody that knew him to go there at all times.
That's ridiculous.
Vince Young used to buy every plane ticket on a plane and then fly on it by himself so that he wouldn't have to fly with anyone else.
I mean, wouldn't you just get a private plane at that point?
You'd think.
Okay.
You'd think.
Just see, this is why I need to be hired again.
Yeah, I don't know. I've thought about this, like at the point that you have a windfall, you win the lottery, you do something like that or whatever.
Sure.
And then you feel like a certain sense of, like, here's the deal. You got X million of dollars, and somebody's like, $1,000 would really help me out. And, like, of course you're going to do it because they're your friend or whatever.
Right.
But then when everybody does that, then all of a sudden, well, it's just, and how to sit there and like look at people and go, well, you know what, I can't do it.
Right.
Is an awkward position for everybody to be in. And so, I don't envy the trying to figure it out. Now, $70,000 in jewelry,
I
don't know.
Oh, it's like Andre Rison and Leon Searcy both said in that Broke documentary. Andre Rison was like, what people don't understand is that it's not just that everybody comes up to you and asks you for some money, but you're the first person that you ever knew that made it.
Yeah.
Like Andre Rison's like, dude, I'm from the straight ghetto. Like I was never surrounded by anybody that could even like pay their rent, and so I feel obligated to help these people. That part is sad. I want to know. Here's other thing that's so striking about some of this mismanagement of financing. If he bought his mom a house, $750,000, and he bought a Bentley, $250,000, so many of these guys, they don't just buy it in cash.
Right.
They set up payment plans like the rest of us.
Right.
But then that's so silly because then when you have 7 mortgages and 10 car payments, you're living paycheck to paycheck, even though your paycheck's like $500,000. What a thing.
He did say, that was a dumb purchase. Don't buy a new car like that. He went on and on. So, I think he learned a lesson there.
Well, good.
He also gave $60,000 to loved ones and $450,000 in taxes.
Yeah.
And he did say that, and I didn't know this, that if you pay wherever you play, whatever city you're playing in, you have to pay that state's taxes.
That's right.
That's one of the things that the guys really get upside down on is that no one teaches them that. So then all of a sudden they just have bad taxes in 6 different states. Because when you're in the NFL, you play all over the country.
The difference between playing in California and Texas is like $1 million.
Yeah, that's what he said.
On a major,
but
yeah,
that's insane. I had no idea. I just assumed they had to pay taxes like the rest of us.
Nope, they're working in a state. They pay taxes in the state.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and the other thing, too, is that these guys, especially in the NFL, you only get paid during the season. So it's like Andre Rison said.
Like a teacher.
The dudes who don't know how to manage their money, it don't matter how much money you got. You don't got no money.
Yeah.
And when the season's over, there's no more money. And it's like, whoa, what am I going to do from January through August?
Yeah.
It's just crazy that's a reality. But also it's not, because it's like the financial people on that doc say. It's just an analysis of humans. How many 20-year-olds do you know that you could give $15 million to that would be responsible with it? Mostly none.
I think it's up to these professional sports teams to set these guys up for success. That is just Mama Bear talking, but I think it is. Okay?
What else you got, Carolyn?
All right. Well, another NFL story. New York Jets defensive lineman Quinnen Williams was arrested last night.
He was.
He had a Glock in his luggage at the airport.
Man.
They're saying it was a technical issue. He did not store.
It's technically illegal.
It's technically illegal. Yes, it technically was not loaded, but they said it was not stored lawfully, and that's what. So basically, I think he tried to bring a gun on board.
Was it a carry-on?
It was a carry-on. So technically, you're supposed to tell the people at the airport, "I have a gun and this is a luggage." You check it, you do the thing.
What? I just don't understand.
Yeah.
I'm about to get on a flight tomorrow. I'm wondering how many ounces of liquid I can take with me.
Well, be more concerned about coronavirus.
Yeah, I don't care.
Okay.
Our moms packed us hand wipes for Boise. We're okay.
Aw, cute.
Isn't that nice?
Moms are the best.
Yes.
In other news, in other sports,
we're only like 40. It's fine.
Hey, never stop momming. That's my hashtag.
I think Suzanne and Jenny are 100% on board with you.
Yeah, never stop momming. I'll never stop. Can't stop, won't stop. I'm sorry.
Oh my goodness. Let it rip, Bukta.
Oh, all right. Are you familiar with Joey Chestnut?
The eater.
The competitive eater.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes, so...
Is this the Asian? This is the Asian guy.
No, that's Kobayashi. So Joey Chestnut... Yeah. Joey Chestnut dominated Kobayashi so bad that Kobayashi, some people think, made up a sort of ailment that made him retire. Because Kobayashi was legendary, right? And Chestnut crushed him in the hot dog contest.
Is this one of those big guys, or is he small?
No, he's tiny.
Yeah,
he's like...
He's like 160 pounds.
The little guys are the crazy ones. All right.
He's got no anything.
It's like my brother Josh eats me under the table.
Guess how many Big Macs he ate in 38 minutes?
Oh, man. I mean...
In 38 minutes?
100.
No.
Big Mac.
No,
dude. I mean, the dude ate like 70 hot dogs in like 20 minutes.
Think about that. You
70
got the
hot
bread,
dogs.
But you got to eat the bun in the hot dog,
I know, but
how many Big Macs did he eat?
32. 15.36 pounds of Big Macs.
See, I just want to know the physiology behind it, because the level of fat and sodium in that should make you like literally pass out, right?
Well, your body has to process it. I mean,
right.
It's just sitting in there.
Right, but there's like no I think there's no vomiting rule.
Yeah.
You can't puke.
Well, for sure, because then you're just making room.
Here's the thing: you can't puke like then, but then you take your check and you go back to your hotel room. Are they checking you?
I got into competitive eating for a while. Not participating, although I do think I could be pretty good at it. But
I could do it with donuts, but that's probably
of all the contests I've ever watched, I watched a spaghetti bolognese eating contest. There's no comparison. These guys are eating pounds and pounds and pounds. I mean, I'm talking plates of spaghetti that are like as big as this desk.
Did anyone barf? Did they barf?
Everybody barfs besides the winner, pretty much.
I love to eat.
Yes.
I'm going to the Taste tonight, and I'm going to have myself all the things that I can have.
Good.
And I'm very excited about it. It's one of the great events. I look forward to it with my wife every single year. And on all the rest of the days, I look forward to eating on those days too. The eating competitively doesn't even feel appealing to me. There's nothing about it where I go, yeah, that would be fun at first, and then it would go bad. No, it just looks all bad. It's so egregious.
You got to watch the 30 for 30 on Joey Chestnut and Kobayashi. It shows their training regimens.
You know, if you and I sat here and watched and listened to every podcast and documentary that Coulter threw our way, I mean, I don't think it would even work.
You know
anymore.
what? When we get quarantined,
but that's
for
the thing.
14
I work way more than both of you guys.
No,
you could find time.
No,
I just don't have children.
That's
exactly
just
okay. But you watch hundreds of hours of football.
Yeah, I do.
And I do watch Keeping Up with the Kardashians. So.
And Sunset Boulevard or whatever
I
the
know,
hell your
so
show
all
is.
fine time.
The training though, these guys they drink gallons upon gallons of water and then eat giant buckets of salad first to condition their stomach. It's an art in stretching. It's a science, and it's really weird.
Well, it looks disgusting when they're doing the hot dogs and they're dipping them in water.
Yeah, because they're trying to get.
I want to have a Chicago dog. I don't want to have dipped in water.
It's because we're eating for pleasure, not for money.
That's right.
Do you have anything else, Carolyn?
One more.
Okay.
Scott Piercy from the PGA.
Yes.
He is in trouble.
Whoa! What did Scott do?
He posted some homophobic memes about Pete Buttigieg. I cannot say his name.
The formerly presidential candidate. Yes.
He has been dropped by a few sponsors, and he claims he wasn't trying to offend anyone with his memes.
Okay.
I saw them. They were pretty rude.
Okay.
So
I have not seen them. I didn't know any of this. I didn't know anything that's happened in the last 12 hours. So thank you for doing this, letting us know not to carry a gun on an airplane and not to post homophobic memes.
Yeah, and don't eat 32 Big Macs in 38 minutes.
Well, that is a guarantee.
I'm disappointed about Quinton Williams out of all the things she just said. He's a stud.
I'm disappointed too.
That's a dumb choice.
Well,
obviously, it's not. It's the NFL, so it's probably not going to affect his playing whatsoever.
Yeah.
No, they're making up an excuse, and it'll all be good.
That's insane.
I don't think he was doing it to be like a terrorist on a plane.
No, right, but it's just I don't know.
Yeah, just don't be dumb.
Everybody trying to play this role of some sort.
Well, you talk about all the things that these guys spend money on. That's what you should spend money on. Somebody to carry your gun for you. Someone to drive your car for you.
Or just maybe
leave it at
not
home.
a gun at all.
Do you need
I don't know.
Do you need to take it?
You're Quinton Williams. What are they going to do to you?
Exactly.
Carolyn, thank you.
Thank you.
As always, Chicken Doesn't Know Sports. Brought to us by the Iron Grizz every Wednesday night. The Iron Grizz wine tastings. Coulter, tell the people about it and hook them up.
$15 per head, but we got a pair of vouchers for you. So you and a friend, you and a girlfriend, you and a boyfriend, you and whoever you want to take, go to the Iron Grizz. You're going to get 7 pours this upcoming week. They're featuring Argentinian wines, Malbec and otherwise. I thought all wines from Argentina were Malbecs, but apparently there's Argentinian wines that are not Malbecs.
Oh, I'm going to that.
And so there's a flight, and I'm sure it's going to be delicious. They have premier wines from around the world every single Wednesday. So go to the Iron Grizz, located next to the University of Montana Golf Course, 515 South Avenue.
Great spot, no doubt about it. The golf course, man, it's going to be opening quick. Are you kidding me here? It's already 100 degrees out? Is that what we agreed on today?
Well, it's shorts weather.
Feels like it. Anyway, yeah, get over there to the Iron Grizz. Go check it out. Hour 1 of the Bilks. Hour 2, straight ahead. Let's get into some more basketball and also the head coach of the University of Montana football team, Bobby Hauck. A 4-year extension. What does it mean? What does it say? We'll break it all down for you right after this.
For more than 40 years, Boyle, Devney & Meyer has been among the most trusted accounting firms in the state of Montana. Boyle, Devney & Meyer is an experienced, diverse accounting firm rooted in historical Missoula with a look toward the future. They've established a reputation for excellence, teamwork, and community involvement. Whether you're a small business that needs tax assistance, or you're a nonprofit or an individual looking for a personal, comprehensive financial plan, Boyle, Devney & Meyer can help. Give Boyle, Devney & Meyer a call today, 721-3555, or visit bdmcpa.com.
At Opportunity Bank of Montana, we know that checking accounts are not one size fits all. Let us introduce you to Opportunity Bank's full suite of checking account products, including personal and business options with no minimum balance and no monthly service fee. Or if earning cash back suits you, Opportunity Reward Checking may be the perfect fit. Need to earn interest? We have those options too. Call or come into Opportunity Bank for a checking account that fits you. Opportunity Bank of Montana, serving Montanans since 1922. Member FDIC.
This is Mike Nugent with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. Berkshire Hathaway provides Western Montana with full-time real estate professionals for you whenever you need us. Our reputation as the state's most knowledgeable and available real estate group has helped build unmatched trust in the Garden City and statewide. If you have been thinking of making a real estate move in the short or long term, give me a call. No pressure, no expectations. Just professional opinions and service at whatever pace you are comfortable with. Give me, Mike Nugent, a call today, 531-1802. And remember, every question is good to ask.
Grizz Greats, the coaching tree rolls on, and episode 8 now out with Wayne Tinkle. Wayne Tinkle taking over for Larry Krastowiak after 2 absolutely fantastic years with Coach K, but a guy who played at the University of Montana, had an unbelievably long and well-traveled professional career, then on 3 different coaching staffs as an assistant at Montana before taking over the reins, and in 8 seasons, he went to the tournament 3 times, including 3 times in 4 years.
Wayne Tinkle coached some of the most exciting players in the history of the University of Montana as well. Anthony Johnson, the winner of the ESPY after his epic performance against Weber State in the Big Sky Tournament Championship game, as well as Will Cherry and Kareem Jamar, 2 of the best guards to ever come through the Big Sky Conference.
Coach Tinkle, one of the most beloved figures around the University of Montana. His episode, Grizz Greats, the coaching tree, out right now. Search Grizz Greats wherever you get your podcast and listen to it along with all the other episodes and bonus episodes out right now. Grizz Greats is brought to us by Blackfoot Communications, Stockman's Bar, and Berkshire Hathaway Real Estate.
If you are hurt or disabled, you may be entitled to benefits from an insurance company or Social Security. I'm Chris Helmer, an attorney at Clark Fork Law Offices. Our Missoula firm specializes in worker compensation, personal injury, and Social Security disability. There are many unknowns when injured or disabled. The other side is fighting hard. You should too. Call Clark Fork Law at 728-0168 for a free consultation or visit clarkforklaw.com. Again, 728-0168.
ESPN Radio for Western Montana, KKVU HD3 Stevensville, and 102.9 FM on K275BS Missoula. ESPN Missoula Sports Center.
Good evening, Ryan Tutel, Colton Wallace, 109 ESPN Sports Center. Trace Tinkle is the greatest scorer in the history of Oregon State basketball. The OSU senior and Missoula Hellgate product scored 23 points in the Beavers' 68-65 win over Stanford to surpass Gary Payton as the school's all-time leading scorer. Tinkle now has 2,190 points, the 7th most in Pac-12 history.
The Montana Grizz men's basketball team fell home last night to Northern Colorado, 71-64. Late in the second half, the Bears went on a 13-2 run to assume a 16-point lead with just over 2.5 minutes to play. The Grizz put on full-court pressure and went on an 8-0 run to answer over the next 120, but couldn't climb all the way back.
Jonah Radabov led UNC with 21, including 17 in the second half. He sparked a 10-2 run and a 12-2 spurt by making 3-pointers. Grizz senior Sy Pridgett led Montana with 26 points, including 20 after the break. The loss drops the Grizz to 14-5 and into 3rd place in the Big Sky standings heading into the final game of the regular season tomorrow night. The Grizz will celebrate senior night for Pridgett, Kendall Manuel, and Jared Samuelson against Southern Utah at Dahlberg Arena tomorrow. Tip-off at 7.
And finally, Montana State won their second in a row, topping Southern Utah 73-65 in Bozeman. The win moves Montana State into a sealing a first-round bye in the Big Sky Tournament next week, and also secures their first winning season in a decade.
ESPN Sports Center is presented by Clark Fork Law.
Something in the air tonight. Gotta want me taken. Baby, don't you wanna ride?
Not for the Kurtz Polaris, Brian Tutel, and Coulter Nuanez.
Welcome back. Hour number 2. Happy Friday to you. Welcome to the weekend. Hope you got big plans. I certainly do. I'm like 11 hours from being on an airplane to Boston. Actually, I guess 12. I think I'm getting on the airplane exactly this time in 12 hours. Anyhow, hope you're well. Thanks for being with us on a Friday afternoon. If you missed anything in the first hour of the show, check it out on the podcast. The podcast is available wherever you get your podcasts. Just search Tutel and Nuanez. You can listen anytime you would like, night or day, all that kind of stuff. We appreciate you checking that thing out. It's brought to us by the Wingate by Wyndham Hotel and Blackfoot Communications. Also, if you would like to give us a call, you can certainly do that. 329-1899, the phone number, 329-1899. All guests join us via the Rangich Brothers RV phone line. And if you want to listen live, you go online, 1029ESPN.com. You listen on the stream. It's the Listen Live tab. It's available there, and it's there thanks to Opportunity Bank, your local bank, your opportunity. And if you need a new car, how about Carl Tyler Chevrolet? The Carl Tyler Auto Group, locally owned, community-driven. Coulter, Bobby Hauck has a new contract. And both of us just stared blankly at one another when we saw the Instagram post. First of all, there was not a lot of news about this ahead of time, that this was in the works, that this was happening, and so forth and so on. And then
there was also all the rumors of him
San Diego State. Right.
A lot of times those rumors are conjured up to spark discussions for extensions.
Well, in any case, he worked it out in his favor, because for the first time, I think we could say safely, right, in the history of the state of Montana, a sports coach for a public university has a 4-year deal, exceeding what had been the previous thought ceiling of 3 years being the max and all of that, which I guess we think, it requires a written approval by the Board of Regents to exceed the 3-year ceiling that's there. So this just came out this afternoon. We don't know a lot of the details of some of this stuff, of why a 4-year deal was allowed in this case, of what went on in order to make that happen. And I'm interested to know, Coulter, like in the 2 years since Bobby Hauck has taken back over at the University of Montana, clearly the football team has gotten better each of the 2 seasons. From the last year of Bob Stitt, the first year of Bobby Hauck was better. The second year of Bobby Hauck was better still. A 4-year deal in the scope of deals on a national level is not that long, but this is like the most aggressive deal that you could possibly put together for a coach. Like they went to work to get this.
Well, yeah, it's precedent setting.
It's precedent setting, and I'm wondering, is it justified to you? Because even as Bob, they get back into double digits. They get a bye, a seed in the national tournament. The Grizzlies win a playoff game at Washington Grizzlies Stadium. They go to the final 8, the quarterfinal, of the FCS tournament. They also, Bobby Hauck is 0-2 against Montana State since he's been here, including an absolute thumping at Bozeman this past time around. And in the final game of the season, it wasn't a great performance. And look, I'm not going to sit here. I understand, like, Dalton Steed didn't have his best day. I think we all understand that. But also, he took great responsibility on the punt block, the punt that was blocked by Weber State that led to the special teams touchdown, which ultimately was the difference in the game. You got to give great credit to the defense, which was absolutely lights out in that football game. And it was an ugly game, pouring down rain, cold, sloppy, the whole thing. But I think on one hand, look, anybody that's a Montana Grizzly fan, if you're looking at this thing from an objective standpoint in light of just the football side of this, says things are much better now than they were 3 years ago for the Montana Grizzly program. Okay? But also,
does that justify going and creating a precedent-setting, never-been-done-before sort of contract to stamp in that sort of way the formalization of the approval at its highest possible way that you could do that from the institution, from Kent Haslam on to Bobby Hauck? That's my question.
Yes, because I think that the number one problem that's happened at the University of Montana over the last 10 years as an institution from the top down has been lack of stability. I think that you can talk about scandal and NCAA violations and all that. The number one reason the Grizz aren't as good as they once were is because of all the coaching changes. You just can't sustain a nationally elite profile when you have as many coaching changes as Montana's had over the last 10 years, unless it's just guys that are like Joe Glenn coming here for 3 years and then moving on to the FBS. Mm-hmm. That's the only way that the quote-unquote instability can be beneficial. Other than that, if guys are leaving their positions for any other reason than moving up, it's not going to be good for the program. And then also it's been lack of continuity because of multiple athletic directors, multiple presidents. I mean, 3 presidents, 2 athletic directors. That's then led to, count them up, if you count Bobby Hauck's last year in 2009, 5 coaches.
Yeah.
So then that lack of stability then leads to lack of stability in philosophy, and that's where Montana on the field has suffered. We've had the debate going on 3+ years now. Did Montana take a dip because of the talent? I think that the fact that Bobby Hauck came in here and used so many of Bob Stitt's players and is still using Bob Stitt's players, that talent was far down the list in terms of what the issues were.
Yeah.
It was just the changing in systems. And when you go from Bobby Hauck I formation to Robin Pflugrad Oregon spread to Mick Delaney 1960s pro style offense to Bob Stitt air raid to then back to Bobby Hauck, which I do give Coach Hauck credit for going out and hiring an offensive coordinator that is a lot different than what he had done in the past to cater to this personnel, and then recruiting a quarterback who has a modernized skill set too. But all that said, stability is what the program needs. Mm-hmm. And like you said, 4 years is not that outrageous. It's precedent setting in Montana.
Right.
But just saying, hey, we're going to let you have a full recruiting cycle and we'll see where you're at in 6 years after your 6th season. The fact that they have some of the things that they have in place, I think you got to keep one guy in charge, because you got to see it's going to be a couple of years still until we truly see the recruiting advantages that the Champion Center gives Montana.
Yeah.
And so I think it's necessary. I find this so striking because, again, you can talk about all the reasons Bobby Hauck left and all the reasons Montana fell from grace and all these sorts of things. But Bobby Hauck's number one point of contention his first time around was the year-to-year contracts. He used to rail and rant and rave about it all the time. But we've talked to Rob Fennessy and Ty Gregorek, 2 guys that were on that coaching staff, and I think it's actually sort of ironic in the fact that, on one hand, it was a thorn in Bobby Hauck's side. He couldn't handle it. But on the other hand, it actually used him he was able to actually use it for massive motivation with his coaches. It's like Rob Fennessy said. He said, I showed up to work every Monday thinking I was coaching for my job. There was no talk about us being 7-time defending Big Sky champions and 80-17. No way. We're coaching for our jobs.
Yeah.
And I think in a certain element that actually was beneficial to Montana, but here nor there, I think this is a good move by Montana.
Well, and let me be clear too. Tutel Nuanez 102.9 ESPN Radio. The question stems not from the duration of it at all, and as you said, I mean, that's really just one class cycle. I mean, that's not that long. The point is that a lot of work was deliberately done to change a barrier that had never been changed before to do this, and that speaks to an additional level of commitment, of work, of ingrained sort of status of Bobby Hauck at the University of Montana. I mean, look, what Bobby Hauck did the first 7 years he was with the Grizzlies is unimpeachable from a football standpoint.
Right.
And you and I, when he was first hired back, had many, many conversations about the positives and negatives of Bobby Hauck being hired here again. And from a football standpoint, once again, in the first 2 years, the returns have been very solid.
Mm-hmm.
Also,
we are, from the first time he was here to this, occupying a vastly different era in Missoula, Montana, and in the nation at large, but particularly here.
And when you can overlay it with Bozeman.
That's right.
And Montana State.
Overlay it with Bozeman, but also just the way people perceive sports, what they value. I think once upon a time in Missoula, Montana, winning was the number one value that people had, that fans had for the program. By and large, if you're going to ask me, I would still say it's probably number one, but I think there's a number of other things, types of kids, who they are, what they're about, that have creeped up there. And by the way, Bobby Hauck has, by and large, I think, got a pretty good track record on some of that stuff as well. And he will be the first to show you his track record of lawyers and teachers and businessmen that have matriculated through the University of Montana football program and gone on to be very good, very valuable, very invested citizens in whatever community and stride of life they have chosen to go to. But all I'm saying is it is a different climate that we are in now because of what happened at the University of Montana. There are still detractors of Bobby Hauck along those lines. And in 2 years, that is not a ton of time to see what is the climate and culture that he is still working on implementing at the University of Montana in terms of the football team. And I am surprised by this. A 3-year extension, do the max deal, do the whole thing, that's great. And I also would like to know how much, who was at the tip of the spear, so to speak, saying this we got to get done. We got to make this bigger. You know? Was it Kent Haslam that said, you've done such a good job, I'm going to go to bat for you? Was it Bobby Hauck saying, hey, 1 year was bad, 3 years is better, but it still ain't good. We need to get longer. We need to. Is that how that? I don't know. I don't know how it went. And the process to go to the Board and Regents and ask for this is an interesting one. And I'm even very delicate in talking about it because there's so little that we know. Like, we don't know how these channels of communication and allowances work. We just knew that there was a rule, and then all of a sudden, or at least a precedent, and now there is a new one.
I have a Freedom of Information Act request in for the contract as well as the assistant coaching salaries. It usually takes a while to get those, but we'll keep you up to date. I have a feeling that this contract that Bobby Hauck just signed is precedent-setting, not just for the duration of the years that it has. I also think that this is the part I'm the most interested in is how much money does he have for his pool of assistants, and how is he divvying that money up? Also, where is that money coming from? This is speculation on my part right now, so this is not fact. This is just what I believe could be true, and we will confirm this as we get the numbers. But I have a feeling that Bobby Hauck has more money to give his assistants than anybody else in the state of Montana and maybe anybody else in the Big Sky Conference. I think that's one of the reasons why you have guys that are not only incredibly veteran coaches, but there's been no one that's left, with the exception of Jay Schillinger just last week. I just really highly doubt that Brent Pease, who's been an offensive coordinator in the SEC, is working for minimum salary coaching receivers. It is his alma mater. He is later on in his career, but I really don't think he's making $40,000 like receivers coaches around the country. I think he's making a lot more than that. He's also the associate head coach, so it comes with a little bit of a caveat, but I wouldn't be surprised if, in terms of percentages, that guys like Tim Rosebach, Kent Bear, Brent Pease, if those guys are making good money. And that's a great step for this program as a whole, and a great example to set for the rest of the league, too, because I think, again, stability is the key to this whole thing. And I think that's where the Grizz were able to take such a huge step from year one to year two. Every single coach was back. It's way easier to implement this tough, hard-nosed culture when the message is the same and no kid feels abandoned and there's no weird lines of communication going on. So I get what you're saying for sure. It's just such an interesting situation because
again, I'm not even saying anything. I'm just asking the question.
No, I understand. I understand.
Unique circumstance.
How do you phrase this?
Oh, it's the point of all of radio, isn't it? Trying to figure it out.
The autonomy that Bobby Hauck has is amazing. And I think that there was all this speculation. There's people that I have talked to that said that he talked to them at fundraiser functions around the state, and there was talk that he really was offered the San Diego State job. We've heard that there's been people in the administration that have talked about it as well. If he really was offered the San Diego State job, the head coaching job to replace Rocky Long, and he really did say no, first of all, that's crazy.
Yes.
It is a testament to, if that is true, it's a testament to his love of Montana.
Capital
certainly.
I, capital F.
But regardless, Bobby Hauck has said this multiple times. He's not directly addressed what he's talking about, but he said multiple times, we have unfinished business here.
Mm-hmm.
If you know Coach Hauck at all,
that means one thing.
If you know him at all, you know that he is a maniacal competitor.
Yes.
If there was one guy that would turn down millions of dollars to coach in the Mountain West, simply,
or even the Big Sky,
to scratch off the one looming thing on his resume, 3 national championship game losses is the only blemish on his resume. If there's a guy that would do it at his alma mater to erase that or to overcome that, to get that monkey off his back, it's Bobby Hauck.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's fair. If there is a guy, it probably is him. I'm just not sure there is a guy, and I think that there's a lot more to all of this stuff than
there is. And
what we
so
know.
Stay tuned on those numbers, because I will be really interested to see, especially some of the incentives and stuff.
It's also worth noting this, Tutel Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. As we've talked about before, but Montana has the huge luxury of being by far the institution that the school that has the least amount of money as a matter of percentage coming from the institution going into its athletic program.
Right.
Between the ticket sales that are second to none and the boosters that are second to none at the University of Montana, the athletics department they're not self-sufficient. It's still a third, 35%
right,
plus.
But they're above a lot of schools even in the Mountain West. They're above schools like Nevada. They're above schools like Wyoming.
And you talk about Eastern Washington, who's just had a report put together formally by members of its own faculty saying cut athletics or cut way back on athletics because they're taking 70-75% of their budget from the institution itself. And that, by the way, is not that's much closer to the norm. 60, 70, 75%, even 80 at places like Cal Poly coming from the school to support the athletics department. And so, when you talk about the money and people look at the, some of the enrollment numbers and that kind of thing, you go, well, and now we're going to go, pay this amount of money. Well, the money is there in a lot of ways for the athletics at the University of Montana because they have been so well supported by their fan base and by the people who have chosen to earmark money to the school in that respect. So I got no problem with that in this at all. I'm just interested to see the specifics of this and then the future of this, because this says that Bobby Hauck, and not that anybody thought that he was in any kind of not here to stay scenario, but this took it to a level that was surprising to me. It's Tutel Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio.
One last point on this before we get into Cat basketball. I think when you make the decision, and this is a multiple person decision. This is an institutional decision.
That's right.
To bring Bobby Hauck back initially. Mm-hmm. There's no choice but to see it all the way through. I think that you have to give him as much time as he wants and needs. And barring some sort of off-the-field scandal, if they produce, I think that there's no way you can cut ties with this guy, period.
Well,
do you know what I'm saying? Like, once you go into this situation, you got to just see how it plays out. I mean, you have to give him a bare minimum of 6 years.
First of all, I don't think there's any reason to not do that.
Right.
Okay, so I'm not saying there is, but I also don't think, let's put it like this. Who was hired first, Bobby Hauck or Seth Bodner?
Seth Bodner.
Wrong. Hauck was here before Seth Bodner got hired, I believe. I mean, Seth Bodner's, I think, a year and a half into his tenure. Well, maybe coming up on 2 years. It's very close.
I think that Bodner was hired. I think he's coming up. I think it was 2.5
We'll have to take a look. But the point is that, I think that there are the idea that any school is just ultimately and completely beholden to a guy is not unprecedented. I mean, you could look at places like Alabama, you could look at places like Clemson, so we get all of that. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't be, but I'm not as ardent about it as you are. Like, there's no way that you could ever possibly not go down this road.
Seth
Well, you certainly
Bodnar took
could.
the president's role on January 1st, 2018.
Mm-hmm. So just about a month after Bobby Hauck was hired. And so all I'm saying is that, like, the athletics department, and that's their show, and Ken Haslam was well in place, and that he hired Bobby Hauck after he released Bob Stitt and so on and so forth. But from an institutional standpoint, I mean, you said this is an institutional decision. I don't think there is. I mean, clearly everybody is all in, because it has to get signed off by everybody at some point to get 4 years done. So that's all well and good, but I just don't think. You're not beholden to anybody, Nobody is. It's a job. You can stay at your job or you cannot. More on this down the road.
Yeah, man. I think that the word unique is misused a lot. And I think this is a truly unique situation in college football.
We will speak more about this soon. But next, we got to talk about the Montana State Bobcats, what they were able to do winning last night in Bozeman and locking up a bye at a moment and in a space where it didn't look like that was going to come close to happen. And also, who do we got as a conference first team in men's basketball? We'll tell you all about it right after this. Hey, experience the ultimate in performance, breakthrough technology, and intelligent innovation from Polaris with the introduction of the 2021 snowmobiles. New Chaos models available at Kurtz Polaris. It's a new drive system, Quick Drive 2, a new 2.7-inch Series 8 track. And how about this? Over 100,000 combinations to customize your sled during the snow check going on right now through April 15th. It's through April 15th. So get to Kurtz Polaris, 2904 West Broadway, Highway 83 in Sealy. Learn more about the 2021 lineup of brand new snowmobiles. They're out right now. You'll be the first to get them snow check at Kurtz Polaris.
Get March markdowns at Carl Tyler Chevrolet. Right now, save big on this 2019 Blazer all-wheel drive with leather interior, power panoramic sunroof, navigation, and Bose audio. Now $5,800 off. Or take advantage of $4,900 off this 2019 Trax LT all-wheel drive. Visit us today at 3663 North Reserve Street or gmofmontana.com. Carl Tyler Chevrolet. Find new roads.
Hi there, it's Les Schwab Alignment and Brakes and Shocks and Wheels and Tires. Some tire places don't offer all that, but we do to help keep you safe. And during the Les Schwab Spring Tire Sale, save up to $110 on a set of 4 select tires. Stop by or book an appointment at leschwab.com. Les Schwab Tires, doing the right thing since 1952. Limited time offer while supplies last. Actual discount amount depends on tire size and type. Cannot be combined with other offers. Details at leschwab.com.
In Western Montana, we know shopping local matters, and you may think you'd pay more for the quality and customer service that comes with it, but not at Selway Armory. Selway Armory is locally owned with knowledgeable specialists that can answer your questions. In addition to the expertise, though, Selway Armory also has a bigger selection and lower prices than the box stores. When you're in the market for firearms and accessories, save money with the experts at Selway Armory. Selway Armory, 2825 Stockyard Road, Unit E6, and online at selwayarmory.com.
The Advocates want you to remember that warmer weather means more people will be out and about. Remember, slow down in residential areas. Kids will be out riding their bikes and their scooters or walking their dogs, so pay attention to the road. If you are injured due to someone else's negligence, the Advocates can help. Speak with an experienced attorney today for free. The Advocates will handle the hassle after an accident so you can focus on getting better. So call 640-4444 or chat with an attorney online 24/7 at MontanaAdvocates.com. You deserve an advocate.
Coulter, gracious mercy, and thank the heavens, it is time once again for the NC2A men's basketball tournament. It is here, and you and I are back again with the Tutela Nuanez Bracket Challenge.
We hook people up all over Missoula all the time, but this will be an outstanding contest with entries from all over and your chance to win a variety of great prizes, including a $250 tab at Paradise Falls or $250 worth of equipment from Aspen Sound.
That's right, we got great prize packages for first, second, and and third place. Selection Sunday is March 15th, and then you got to get your entries in between then and the start of the tournament on Thursday, the morning of the 19th. Coulter, I'm floating with anticipation and excitement, and of course, you can compare your brackets to Coulter's and mine and try and beat the dopes on the radio. Won't that be satisfying?
More than $1,000 worth of gifts we'll be giving to you, so stay tuned to Tutel Nuanez 4 to 6 p.m. each weekday for details on the ESPN Missoula Bracket Challenge, brought to you in part by Paradise Falls and Aspen Sound.
ESPN Missoula Sports Center.
Good afternoon, Ryan Tutel, Colton Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Sports Center. Trace Tinkle is the greatest scorer in the history of Oregon State basketball. The OSU senior and Missoula Hellgate product scored 23 points in the Beavers' 68-65 win over Stanford to surpass Gary Payton as the school's all-time leading scorer. Tinkle now has 2,190 points. That's the seventh most in the history of the Conference of Champions.
The Montana Grizzly men's basketball team fell home last night to Northern Colorado, 71-64. Late in the second half, the Bears went on a 13-2 run to assume a 16-point lead with just over 2.5 minutes left. The Grizz put on a full-court press and went on an 8-0 run over the next 120, but could not climb all the way back.
Jonah Radabal led UNC with 21, including 17 points in the second half. He sparked a 10-2 run and the 13-2 spurt also by making a couple of three-pointers. Grizz senior Site Bridget led Montana with 26, including 20 after halftime. The loss drops Montana to 14-5 and into third place in the Big Sky standings heading into the final game of the regular season tomorrow night. The Grizz will celebrate senior night for Bridget, Kendall Manuel, and Jared Samuelson against Southern Utah at Dahlberg Arena. Tip-off 7 p.m. tomorrow.
And finally, Montana State beat Southern Utah 73-65. The Bobcats sealed a first-round bye in next week's Big Sky tournament. They also clinched their first winning season in a decade.
Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio, SWX Montana Television. Great to be with you on this very fine Friday evening. Hope you are having a wonderful day. Thanks for being with us. Carl Tyler Chevrolet, home of the lifetime powertrain warranty. That'll last for as long as you own your vehicle. Carl Tyler Auto Group. Coulter, the Montana State Bobcats were in a tailspin, got blown out of the gym, but this is one of the times where the cliche is so very true. Doesn't matter how much you lose by, it still only counts as one game. And they lost by 29 at Sacramento State last Thursday, 8 days ago. And it looked like it might be all over, but the shouting, they were in sixth place, still an okay standing in terms of trying to get a bye, but going to a good Northern Arizona team that had just beaten the University of Montana Grizzlies on their home floor. And Montana State just looked bad. I mean, it was just awful. And they go in and they get the win and surprise everybody. And then they go in last night and you wonder what team's going to show up here against a very talented Southern Utah team. And guess what? The right Bobcat team showed up. They get another win. They win by 8 last night over Southern Utah. Harold Frey, 22 points, including the bucket of the ball game with about 37 seconds left. He's able to make a huge shot. Even though they won by 8, it got down to a single possession, and Harold Frey stretched that thing back out. And also, I think it's worth pointing out, somebody who's starting to figure it out, and if he does, look out. Jabril Bello, 25 points last night. Are you ready, Coulter? 13 of 16 from the stripe. The big man.
He's an excellent free throw shooter.
Excellent free throw shooter, which is such a huge commodity for a guy who's playing on the interior like he is.
He's shooting 76% from the free throw line this year, which for a 6'9" guy is outstanding.
It is outstanding, and he's now scored 45 points in the last 2 games. So, I don't know if this is a corner that's being turned, if it's starting to figure it out, or if it's just 2 good games, and that's what it is. But he is, if there's going to be a guy who has to be the other real complementary player to Harold Frey for the Bobcats to be successful, at least offensively to me, it's got to be him. He's got great size. He's got great athleticism for how big he is, for how much he weighs. And he hasn't he hasn't played all the way up to what his physical abilities seem like they would be able to cater to, but the last 2 games he has, they have both been, by the way, dubs for the Bobcats, and Montana State with the win, clinching a bye in Boise, and that's huge. I mean, that's an outstanding job of navigating this regular season ultimately by Coach Sprinkle, and then the rest of the team led by Harold Frey.
As somebody that's covered Bobcat basketball since 2011, I will admit that I've been cynical because it just seems as if they are stuck in Groundhog Day. It doesn't matter who the coach is. It doesn't matter who the players are. Montana State's just going to show flashes and give you some optimism, and then just somehow, some way settle in at 15-15, 6th place in the league. One time they won a game in the tournament this last decade when they beat the 11 seed. And other than that, it's a one and done in the tournament, and it's just a rinse and repeat. Can't tell you how many times I've written the Bobcats are alone in 4th place with 3 weeks to play, and then they're not.
Yeah, right.
And these guys deserve so much credit for breaking through the glass ceiling in Danny Sprinkle's first season, man.
Can I ask
first
you this,
winning
though?
season in 10 years with a team that's, man for man, talent-wise, this is like 7th out of the last 10 teams.
That's right.
In terms of the guys that they got, but they have one truly special player in Harold Frey, and they got a coach who has, so often when a new coach comes in, there's so much attrition, there's such a learning curve to acclimate to this guy. I think that every single person that's involved in Montana State basketball has been like, wow, we love Danny Sprinkle. Let's play hard for Danny Sprinkle.
Yeah.
The way he's connected to his players so quickly, and the way he's connected to the Bobcat fan base. And that's the other thing is Brian Fish really revamped a program that had lost almost total interest. The records have not fluctuated at all over 10 years, but the crowds were dismal in the last couple of years of Brad Hughes. Fish and Tyler Hall got people back in the stands. But Sprinkle's taking the next step even.
Yeah.
They have a real home court advantage. I mean, they're really good on their home court.
I want to ask you this, and I don't want to be a wet blanket on this because all the things that you said are true.
Yep.
Okay. But at the end of the day, they play Northern Colorado tomorrow.
Yep.
And it's going to be a game that Northern Colorado is absolutely going to be gunning for because they still have a chance to win the Big Sky Conference regular season. And Montana State, obviously, on Harold Frey's senior night, is going to come out and says it's going to be a great game tomorrow in Bozeman. I'm looking forward to this game. If Montana State were to lose it, and we know how good Northern Colorado is, they're 10-10. At the end of it, they finished 500 yet again. Now they have sealed up a winning season overall. They're 16-14,
and they got a bye.
And they've got a bye. But the bye, the bye is. I guess the thing is, if you want to be not pessimistic about this, but if you want to go, well, they're still 500. This is what they've always been. They're just 500 in a year where it works out to be 500, given the way that the season transpired. But I'm only bringing that up as a devil's advocate because I don't buy that view, even though people will want to say that. And who knows, maybe they win tomorrow and they go 11-9, and which is not significantly above 500, but it is, and then also further stamps what they are. But the thing that I buy is the exact thing that I opened this all with, and that is that it at time, not just once. You said 6 times they've been dead on the side of the road. Maybe so, but certainly several times this team has looked done.
I mean,
and they have come back every time, and I give them a ton of credit because that's something we have not seen before.
Who's lost multiple games in league play by 25 points and then got a bye?
Right. Well,
usually that's the thing that just fractures the whole thing.
Yeah, that's right. And they have bounced back from those. And by the way, they've won a couple of games by 20. You know, they have dominated some teams
dominated
at
Idaho.
Times, in this thing. So it's the thing that I would be worried about if I was Montana State in the tournament is that very thing, because they have been maybe the highest of highs and the lowest of lows in terms of the way they've played in certain games, and you just can't afford that. So the inconsistency night in and night out is the thing that will kill you in a tournament setting, obviously. But they're also, I think, a dangerous team because when they are putting it together and when Harold Frey's mixing it up the way he does, it's as good as it gets. We'll take a quick break.
One more point on this.
Yes.
From a matchup standpoint, that's what's going to be the most interesting point, because we talk about matchups all the time, and the last couple years, there's been such outstanding players that sometimes the matchups take a back seat, because if you got Andre Spite, who cares about the matchup? You got a dude who's going to score 40. When you got Michael Ogine and Ahmad Rory, there's no bad matchup because you got the best two-way guards in the entire league.
Right.
No one has that combo right now. Everybody that's in the top 5 has strengths and has weaknesses. But the most interesting part of this is that Portland State swept Northern Colorado. If Portland State would have been healthy, who knows what would have happened with Montana. But the time that they were healthy, they took it to Montana, and they've been competitive against Eastern Washington.
Tax read ready.
Yeah. Right, totally.
The Bobcats are the best matchup in the league for Portland State. I guess what I'm saying is that if you are Northern Colorado and Montana, you want to avoid Portland State, whereas the Cats, you're not as scared of Portland State, and maybe the Cats can do those other two teams a favor by taking Portland State out.
Right. I mean, it is. It's an interesting scenario, and that's why, I mean, tomorrow, this is another thing, by the way, that makes the Montana State women so impressive, because it always comes down to the last game, both in terms of who's going to win the league, which there's still 3 teams alive to win the Big Sky Conference on the men's side on the last day of it. And also, who's going to play who? How's that whole thing going to shake out? And so this is the stuff that's just so crazy that, I don't know, on February the 22nd or whatever it was, Montana State could basically go, well, we'll see you in the capital, Idaho, here soon. Stu Tell Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. Friday, boys and girls, our 2-minute mashup. David's been hard at work putting this thing together. Can't wait to hear what we got for this week and maybe our initial looks at all conference teams for Big Sky basketball. So we'll get to that right after this. Coulter, it's tax season. You got to get the doggone things done. I know it's sitting there like a monkey on everybody's back. You got to find a way, find time to get it done. Who should people go see?
Boyle, Devaney, and Meyer has been the trusted name when it comes to taxes, whether you're an individual, small business, nonprofit, or anybody in the city of Missoula or around the state of Montana. They've been doing it for more than 40 years. But they also love giving back to their community. So they've been gracious enough to support 2 different events that are coming up. One of them being the Blue Door Banquet, sponsored by the Boys and Girls Club. Blue Door Banquet will take place March 28th at the DoubleTree. Blue Door Banquet will raise money for Boys and Girls Club of Missoula County. Specifically, they're raising money for over 450 children that benefit from Boys and Girls Club activities throughout the year. The event features music, a 3-course dinner, a silent auction, and live auction items. A short program will also allow you to learn more about the club and to see 2 performances starring Missoula's youth. Silent auction, and the doors open at 6 p.m. The program begins at 7 p.m. The Blue Door Banquet, March 28th. And this announcement brought to you by Boyle, Devaney, and Meyer, your trusted name in all things taxes for more than 40 years in Missoula.
For more than 40 years, Boyle, Devaney & Meyer has been among the most trusted accounting firms in the state of Montana. Boyle, Devaney & Meyer is an experienced, diverse accounting firm rooted in historical Missoula with a look toward the future. They've established a reputation for excellence, teamwork, and community involvement. Whether you're a small business that needs tax assistance, or you are a nonprofit or an individual looking for a personal, comprehensive financial plan, Boyle, Devaney & Meyer can help. Give Boyle, Devaney & Meyer a call today, 721-3555, or visit bdmcpa.com.
Seafood lovers, it's time to get cracking at the Montana Club's annual Lobster Fest. Feast on one of our 19 mouth-watering lobster dishes, live Maine lobster, succulent lobster tail, and tantalizing one-of-a-kind lobster specialties. 3 big days, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, March 5th through the 7th. It only happens once a year. Don't miss it. See the menu at montanaclub.com. The Montana Club's Lobster Fest on Brooks and North Reserve, Missoula.
Here at Florence Coffee Company, we developed our medium roast coffee beans to make consistently smooth and delicious coffee drinks. You can take the beans home yourself so you can have Florence coffee anytime. Pick up a pound of whole bean or ground for only $12. Better yet, if you bring your own cup, we'll give you a 12-ounce strip coffee free when you buy your coffee beans. Come to any Florence Coffee location or go to florencecoffeeco.com.
Get
Get March markdowns at Carl Tyler's Missoula Volkswagen. Take advantage of Sign Then Drive with zero due-it signing when you lease this 2020 Tiguan S all-wheel drive for $319 per month. Visit Carl Tyler's Missoula Volkswagen and score a great deal. Located at 3665 North Reserve Street or MissoulaVW.com.
OAC when you finance VW credit. Selling price $24,725. VIN number 3VVOB7AX6LMO32985.
Grizz Greats, the Coaching Tree podcast is out now. Interviews with every living head coach in the history of the University of Montana men's basketball team.
If you're a basketball fan, you're going to love this. If you're a Grizz fan, you're going to love this. But if you're a Missoulian, you're going to love this as well. One of the greatest parts about living in the state of Montana is how steeped in history it is, and this is a historical archiving of one of the proudest lineages our community has to offer.
Grizz Greats, the Coaching Tree podcast, out now wherever you get your podcasts. Available thanks to Blackfoot Communications, Stockman's Bar, and Berkshire Hathaway Real Estate.
The Boys and Girls Club of Missoula County is hosting the inaugural Blue Door Banquet on Saturday, March 28th at the Doubletree in Missoula. The Blue Door Banquet is a fun-filled evening that benefits more than 450 children in western Montana each year. The event features music, a 3-course dinner, a silent auction, and live auction items. Doors open at 6. The program begins at 7. All proceeds from the Blue Door Banquet go to the Back a Kid Scholarship Fund. For tickets, visit bgcmissoula.org.
Tutel and Nuanez on 102.9 ESPN Radio for Missoula.
Got a black magic woman. Got a black magic woman. I've got a black magic woman. Got me so blind I can't see.
Coulter, with one game left, is it too early to pick all conference? Tutel and Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio, SWX Montana Television. We are available all the time, by the way, boys and girls, on the podcast. The podcast is available wherever you get your podcast. Just search Tutel and Nuanez. Go check it out. It's available thanks to the Wingate by Wyndham Hotel and Blackfoot Communications. Also, want to remind you, go check out Grizz Greats, the Coaching Tree. Just search Grizz Greats. That's right, Grizz Greats. Easy enough. Wayne Tinkle's episode 8 is out right now, so go check that out along with all the bonus episodes that are there. It's been a really fun series to do, so go listen, rate, enjoy all that stuff. Are you ready for a new truck? Get to Mildenberger Motors in Hamilton for the best deals and the best trucks. Duramax, Chevy, GMC.
Friend of this show, or I guess guest on this show. Maybe we'll make him a friend of this show. Brandon Fisher, former University of Montana linebacker who was the defensive coordinator at Southern Utah last season.
Yes.
He was dismissed at Southern Utah. Was just added to Gus Malzahn's staff at Auburn.
Okay. Well, I mean, I guess if you got to leave Cedar City, you could go to Auburn. It's okay. Good for Brandon Fisher. It was fun to have him on when he was here, and we'll see. He's a young guy early in his coaching career, so we'll see how it goes for him. Coulter, we're going to get to the 2-minute mashup here in just a moment. Quickly, you and I, there's 6 first-teamers basically in men's basketball. There's the 5 first-teamers and the MVP, okay? I don't want to sit here and pick an MVP right now, but you and I are in agreement on 3 guys for sure I know, that Jonah Radabaugh, Harold Frey, and Saeed Pridgett are all 3 of the 6 that are going to be in those spots. Are we in agreement on that?
Yes, we are.
Okay. My other 3 as of right now, okay, and I haven't settled for sure on this, but I am taking Mason Peatling from Eastern Washington.
I agree.
He's the best player on what is right now the best team. And
he's also won Conference Player of the Week 4 times, which goes into it a little bit.
Yep. I'm taking Mason Peatling.
He's also leading the league in rebounding during conference play while also averaging close to 19 points per game. So he's the only guy in the league averaging a double-double.
Despite all of the health issues that he's had and gone through, which is actually part of the reason why it's so impressive what he's done, I'm still taking Jarek Harding and putting Jarek Harding on the first team. And then the last spot that I would have would be between Trayvon Allen, Holland Woods, and Kendall Manuel. Those would be the 3 guys that I would be trying to pick between to put in the last spot. Trayvon Allen, to me, it would be for sure
if his team, but they're just not good. Idaho is just not good, and again, it's not his fault, man. He's carried. He's not done his fault, everything,
and I think it does come with a caveat because the fact that they had 6 seniors, lost them, went full rebuild, and had 8 freshmen last year, and then because of really stupid NCAA perceived violations, got rid of their coach. I think that comes with a caveat because I think that Trayvon Allen deserves credit for not leaving.
Yeah, I mean, right now my tendency would be to put Trayvon Allen over Kendall Manuel and over Boo Boo Woods.
See, I got Holland Woods on the first team, period, over Harding even.
Really?
To me, the debate is Harding, Manuel, and Allen.
Okay.
But Harding and Allen's teams have both really struggled. And, Manuel has put up great shooting splits and good scoring numbers during league play. I mean, Kendall Manuel's 6th in the league in shooting percentage. He's the only jump shooter that's there. The other guys that are ahead of him are all either posts or slashers. Yeah. So, man, I think the other guy that maybe could be in the mix is Cam Shelton at NAU because NAU has been a lot better, and he's definitely their most important player. I think it's Jarek Harding. I'm going. Oh, I'm putting. Yeah, I'm putting Harding on there above Manuel, above Allen.
Okay, so we actually would ultimately, if we stayed with that, and we're not beholden to this, we would have the same 6, but in a different order. But the order doesn't really matter at the end of the day. But okay. Now, David, let me be clear. We're going to do our 2-minute mashup. Do we want to talk about these verticals before the mashup or after?
It'll be relevant after.
Okay, so don't set it up at all with that. Just play the thing and then talk about it. Is that what you're saying?
Just play the thing.
Boys and girls, it's Friday. We're going to have some more fun finish up as we do. What happened this week, you'll find out in 2 minutes. It's the Two-Tail Nuanez 2-minute mashup.
My head's still ringing.
Hello, Montana.
I think I get my pay docked for this, right? For arriving late to a live radio show. You get paid?
I'm never going to ride this chair back. It's now Nuanez and Two-Tail.
Love it.
ESPN.
It's already something special.
I think you'd expect every person that's going to play linebacker in the NFL to be able to do 20 reps.
Yeah.
20.
Okay.
If the punter from Arizona State can do 25, you'd expect that the Buck Buchanan winner can't.
To me, the bench press is the least actually important.
Dante Olson, one of the most polarizing combines that we maybe have ever seen.
We don't have any information in terms of, how this all took place, what the timeline was.
He starts out by benching 15 reps on the 225 pounds.
That is sort of the essence of the combine.
You just never know what you're going to have that night. The greatest night of your basketball career.
It's absolutely a stunning number that he's got.
I think he had the highest vertical at the combine thus far, period.
Whoa.
And he runs 4.88.
If you need me to explain it to you, just Wikipedia it, okay?
It was accentuated tenfold because 2 participants later, this guy from the spaceship comes down and runs a 4.39. Isaiah Simmons, one of the most impressive combines ever.
Look at it.
No, that's it. I'm not going to go play in the NFL. There's no chance. And there's a lot of weight versus weight here that's to my advantage compared to Dante Olson. I weigh 25 more pounds than he does.
Right.
3 inches shorter. Okay.
You look great.
I thought it wasn't as detrimental to him.
Okay.
Just his introspective nature and how real he is. He's a throwback, man. It's like talking to somebody that grew up in the 80s like we did.
How good is this team right now, really?
You're going to play your 5 cupcakes that you're going to beat by 30 at home.
Wayne Tinkle, a guy who is certainly beloved around Western Montana, really anywhere he's ever been, which is basically everywhere.
I only ever thought of him as Mr. Tinkle.
You couldn't have eaten the waffles? You couldn't put your shoes on to keep your socks dry for the day?
They look like awkward baby deer.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sports.
I get the notion of promoting toughness in your program, but at some point we got to help this guy out.
Nobody cares about our problems. That's right.
That's right.
So
let's talk about sports.
But his dad's Dennis Erickson.
That's why I'm trying to figure out if this is the ultimate Bobby Houck troll.
You think something's going to be, 15 minutes, and it's maybe an hour and 15 minutes, and you go, oh, wow, hadn't anticipated that.
Excellent work, David. As always, applaud all the way around. Okay, now what do we want to know about the vertical, though?
2 guys went higher.
Coulter just said it was the best vertical of the weekend at the NFL Combine.
But then a couple guys went over that, right?
What was it the best? It was the best vertical of the weekend, right? Just not the best vertical ever.
No, it was the best vertical by a linebacker.
Okay, right.
Simply just a linebacker.
Right, but didn't these guys that surpassed him go after him?
What are you talking?
I didn't
You've
pay attention
confused
to the
both
order.
of us. Yeah, I don't know what you mean.
All I'm saying is, at the time that I said that, it was the best vertical. But then
No,
guys
you said that on Monday.
Right. Wasn't there testing on Monday?
There was no testing on Monday.
Oh, okay. Two guys had a higher vertical than Dante Olson.
But anyway, Donovan Peoples-Jones, 44.5 inches. That's pretty good. He is a wide receiver, though. The reason you don't know how good Donovan Peoples-Jones is because he played at Michigan, and Michigan cannot throw a football. Ironic. They need their quarterbacks to get to the professional level before they're any good. You get it? It's Tom Brady.
I get it.
Yeah,
that was a long time ago that he was at Michigan.
Coulter, you are headed for Boise, my friend. You're going to be there on Monday. You got all the equipment ready to go? Are you prepared for
30
this?
seconds.
No idea.
Okay. That's reassuring. I will be here in Missoula with you Monday and Tuesday next week, provided that I'm able to get to Boston and back in 36 hours, leaving tomorrow morning. Boys and girls, have a wonderful weekend. I wish each and every one of you the very best. Thanks for being with us this week on Tutel and Nuanez, ESPN Radio, SWX Montana. We'll be back with you for tournament week next week. See you then.
Join Grizzly Hackle Fly Shop tomorrow for their 16th annual Customer Appreciation Day. Store-wide sales, hourly giveaways, barbecue, and more. Don't miss grand prizes from Sims, Patagonia, R.L. Winston Rod Company, Nautilus Reels, Orvis, and Yeti. Try on waders, cast rods, see new flies, or check out the latest and greatest gear in the fly fishing industry. Some of the best fly tires in Montana will be on hand, showing you how to tie their favorite flies. Stop by